Kimberley Rice, and you are tuned into the Secret Sauce Marketing Tasting Show, the groundbreaking podcast for business bosses, professional women, and anyone who is hungry to learn how to create the career, business, and life of their dreams by charting their own course. Today, I could not be more excited to welcome my colleague and friend, Mr. Marc Halpert, who is a multipreneur, LinkedIn branding expert, two-time author, blogger, coach, trainer, speaker. Oh my gosh, I could go on and on and on. But Marc has a lot to say, and I'm so excited to welcome him here today. And so we're going to get right into it. Welcome, Marc, to our Changemakers podcast.
Well, Kimberly, thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
So let's dive right into it, Marc. Why don't you share with our listeners a bit about yourself and a few insights into your professional journey?
Okay. Right out of graduate school, I became a banker. I realized banking wasn't for me, but I went to the other side of the banking desk, to the corporate treasury side, where I was being called on by bankers. So I knew their game. I became a corporate treasurer in a number of European multinational corporations with offices in the United States. And by and large, it was okay. It was good. Got to the last place I was, and it was acquired by a Dutch company. And just before we were acquired, somebody said we had developed a product where we were back in 2000, so this is ancient history. We were accepting credit cards online. Could you imagine that? Everything was being done online. And the company was acquired. They offered me a position elsewhere, and I said, no, thank you, and decided to go out on my own, peddling online credit card processing. And about 2 days after I opened my business, we had 9/11. And for a year thereafter, nothing happened in my business because no one was doing anything new. We were too busy licking our wounds from what had happened in the past couple of days. So as I was looking for more and more new business desperately, a colleague of mine said, hey, I just came across this thing called LinkedIn. You ought to look into it. And I did, and I found it was successful for finding new clients, introducing myself, giving my value proposition, how I could help them with their cash flow, what I brought to the table, my unique experience and all that stuff. And I started going to more classes, and the more I went to more classes, the more I realized I knew more than the teachers because I had taught it to myself. And why was I paying for classes when I could get paid for teaching those classes? And that became a business. So I continue to operate two businesses, the payments business, which has continued on to this day, and a new, now 12-year-old LinkedIn business, where I'm a LinkedIn coach to individuals, LinkedIn trainer to organizations and associations, writer, as you said, I have 2 books under my belt, and I also produce electronic online courses, one for baby boomers and one for nonprofit professionals. And there's more up my sleeve, but I won't give all my goodies away. But I like to think of myself, the bottom line between the two businesses, which seem not to be connected, is that it's all about my client centricity. I make the client tantamount in what they don't expect to receive, and therefore my byline, my tagline is, we exceed expectations. And people tell me that a lot, and it makes me so happy because we all have succumbed to terrible customer service, terrible promises never kept. That doesn't happen with me. And that's why they keep me now. Clients have me for 15 years, and it's a wonderful thing. So long answer, that's what makes me tick. I give people more than 51%. If they give me somewhat less than 49%, I make it work. I handle the problems. I listen to the not so nice music sometimes, but I always end up, we leave with a smile. We always work together. It's all about collaboration.
Wow. So the burning question right there, Marc, is when do you sleep?
My head is always going by about, I start the day at 5:30. I'm usually writing early in the morning. It's my best time. I work straight through the day till about 6:30, and then I'm about cooked, pretty well cooked. But that doesn't mean the phone doesn't ring or something doesn't happen during the afternoon, evening, into the night. I've been pulled out of Broadway shows to fix a client problem. I take care on a weekend. I take care of all this stuff because as a solopreneur, a multipreneur with multiple businesses, stuff happens and I have to be ready 24/7. So I am lucky enough to have a colleague who does all my web development for me, and he and I share the concept that we are on 24/7, 365 while we're on vacation, on holidays. In fact, unfortunately, I had to call him this past Easter. These are things that we just accept. So I sleep when I can,
Okay.
when things aren't going crazy.
So here's the thing. One of the most topics that is dear and near to my heart is helping, inspiring, and empowering, particularly women professionals, to create the career and life of their dreams by charting their own course. And this has a very direct correlation to what you do. And today we're going to talk about your LinkedIn business. What we have just experienced as far as like the big boom of the CV virus coming onto our North American lands has absolutely upended professional services. So just a few weeks ago, maybe life was going on normal for all of us, although that there's a constant shifting in our desires and our aspirations of wanting more. Now we pull all those layers back because we're now confronted in a crisis mode of being sheltering in place, at least here in the United States, in most states, helping to keep our businesses afloat. If there are employees, are they having to take reductions in their compensation, or are they being furloughed absolutely without who knows when to return? So one of the things that you and I share in common, which I'm just, I don't even know the description to make it, but I feel so incredibly strongly about the power of LinkedIn, and it specifically, and then generally building an online network for lots of different reasons. And so I want to focus that in our conversation today, but I would love to hear your thoughts, using LinkedIn now as compared to, say, 5 or 6 weeks ago. Can you give us your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we've seen a giant upturn in people reaching out on LinkedIn through posts and commentary, which I think is wonderful. I'm so happy, and I hope it doesn't go back the other way where we get back to our old bad habits. But I've always been a sharer, and I've always been the type who reads a lot online, and I always like to share great articles I see. I've not changed my functionality in the coronavirus era, but I have seen a lot of other people do that. And sometimes, once in a while, they'll shoot me something and they say, I just shared this, it was successful. I really feel good about it. It's just like you said I should be doing. I'm glad to finally do it. Had that a couple of times last week. We all teach each other, and Kimberly, I know you'll resonate with this. When we teach and it doesn't always like hit somebody between the eyes, somehow it gets in their ears and in their head and somewhere back of their head. And it's ready to come out at a moment's notice. And a lot of that's come out at a moment's notice now from the type of people, the community that we have that we can't see and touch, but we build around us. And if you're a sharer and disseminator, I guess that's the word, of high quality, consistent material, you will be recognized as a thought leader. I've always said that. I've always practiced that. Now other people are doing it. I hope that when we come out of house arrest, as I'm calling it, we are now going to be that much more comfortable sharing material, thoughts, ideas, concepts, collaborative opportunities with others in a way we've never done before. A lot of people are really stymied. They don't know how to talk about themselves. They don't think that what they think is important to somebody else. And I hope we overcome that nascent fear. It's really awful. So I think we're getting there.
It is. And what I find, when we dive into this conversation about LinkedIn, the caveat for me, and I always teach all of our clients, and when I disseminate information or articles, posts, blogs, podcast. I mean, I share every single day some kind of content that for the very sole purpose is to uplift, inspire, educate, compel, all those action verbs. That's why I'm sharing.
Yep.
It honestly is nothing about me. I mean, very, very rarely will you see a post from me that says, congratulate me. I'm so proud that I did X, Y, Z. Not that there's anything wrong with that. There's a difference from acknowledging, particularly I have to say for women, acknowledging their own accomplishments. And so what if we get some atta girls out of it? Why is that so bad? But, that's a whole nother conversation about how women self-sabotage. But from the concept of LinkedIn, I've heard over the years when I've facilitated CLEs at the state bar associations across the country, and the first question is why? Why do I need to be on LinkedIn? I don't get any business online. All of my business comes from word of mouth. Well, I am sure that the attorneys, and I have heard that a gazillion times, or any professional service provider, that they just have contradicted themselves in that one statement.
No, you're exactly right.
And that is, I mean, because anybody that has been living and breathing for the last decade, now more than ever, the moment you hear somebody's name, Marc Halpert, I'm checking you out on LinkedIn, right? I mean, that's just what we do.
That's the intention. We all get so busy, and we all get so, there's so much noise out there.
Yeah.
But when you speak with a voice that is really clear, and you hit on the same body of knowledge all the time, you become a citable, intelligent spokesperson for that topic. Mm-hmm. You do your materials every day. My materials every day too. Set your watch to my 8 a.m. blog post. And one day you're going to be on there too. I know that because you've agreed to be a guest blogger. Every day I have something that hits me between the eyes in my life that is LinkedIn oriented. And I write a post every weekday I have 1,600 of them to my credit at this point. I've been doing it that long. Yes. And there's always something new. And it's always about something where there's a little bit of a moral at the end of the fable. There's a little bit of a story or a lesson. I am in essence, we all are in essence teachers. We try to help people do better, get them unstuck. But women, baby boomers, certain professions, either by the compliance police that hang over them, or the ethics people or create these ethics issues in the law.
Yes.
If you can move around them and you can still express why you do what you do in terms of examples that show you or your thought process at work, then you really don't have to talk about yourself too much.
No.
Now, there's a rule amongst us LinkedIn coaches, and I bend it. It's the 80-20 rule, and you'll never read this. You'll never find it anywhere. And that 80% of the material you put out there should be about other people. And I might make it 90-10. The other 10% might be about me. Things I see, but this is why I can help you. So it's a hybrid of the 90 and the 10 blend. No, Once in a while, I'll put out something like, every time the past 3 weeks, there's been a terrible new unemployment figure. I have a course for baby boomers and underemployed people who want to work on their LinkedIn profile, and they need to have that course because they're probably part of that very large number of newly unemployed. And I will, from time to time, self-advertise very infrequently, because I think the things I say and the way I say them bring plenty of attention to me, but more attention on the reader or the receiver.
So, great point. So, in your words, as kindly as I know you will, and broadly as possible, why should any professional, starting from a college-age student who may be wanting his or her first internship, to someone who has elongated their professional experience into their 70s, why should they all have a, number one, full populated, headshot included, professional headshot included, LinkedIn profile?
Okay, I will answer that question. I'm going to take you back a little bit before college. High school students right now need to have a LinkedIn profile because college entrance applications are asking for the LinkedIn URL.
Okay.
They want to see what you have to say. They want to see what you've done with your life. All the way, the oldest person I ever taught on LinkedIn was 80 plus. He won't tell me how old he is. And he's a vibrant member of the New York City art business. He constantly is in motion. So why should you have a LinkedIn profile? Because the bulk of business professionals look to LinkedIn as the microcosm of the internet for business people. You can Google people and get 1 million hits on all sorts of stuff. Some of it's not even true. On LinkedIn, only you say what will appear on your LinkedIn profile in your own words. This is your opportunity to differentiate yourself from your competitors or differentiate yourself from your colleagues, and there's a reason for both, and to show your worth, your why do you do what you do. And no matter how old you are, no matter what industry you work in, no matter whether you're employed or underemployed, you've taken a hiatus because of a sick family member or to raise your kids or whatever it is, you must be able to use complete sentences starting with the pronoun I and power verbs as if you're making a business presentation to sell yourself as a brand. If you can't sell yourself, no one's going to sell you. And that's the key to why you can have and how you can have a great LinkedIn profile that makes people get excited.
You used a very interesting word that I think that most professional services providers will shrug or feel very icky about, and that is the word sale.
Hey, you know what I'm going to say. We're all in sales. If you can't sell yourself, no one's going to sell you. You know, it's like that game you play in networking meetings. I sit next to you, Kimberley, and they say, the person to your left, introduce that person as if you were them. Now, I'm going to say a few things knowing you, or the things I've read about you, or the things I've heard you in the networking group say for, years and years and years, but it's never going to be as good as what you can say about yourself. So why let someone else talk about you when you know what you want people to know about you and consider you for as a business colleague, a prospective client, as a service provider, or just a collaborator?
One of the things, I absolutely agree with you, but one of the things that I teach often is you must take control of your own narrative. As simple as that.
Simple as that. Lawyers, I hope you're listening. You must have absolute control of your narrative, because if somebody says something on your narrative that is not within the ethics confines of your local, state, or the national bars, you're responsible.
Right.
And you have to, if you're in the financial services industry or you're a wealth manager, they even have worse police compliance issues. So for those of us who aren't fettered by those types of constraints, it's still incumbent upon you to talk about yourself in a way that you are attractive. And it sounds like you, as I read your profile, when I pick up the phone and I call you on the phone, there cannot be a disconnect. It has to be your personality in both media, and it has to be attractive. Now, I'm not going to be attractive to everybody who comes across my profile, but it is, you see how wordy I am. You see how I like to explain things. You see how I like to get to the bottom of stuff in a little bit different way. That's what you got on my profile. It's just as if I'm speaking to you. My book, people tell me, books, they tell me it's just like you're talking to me, Marc. And that's what I've worked so hard all my career to do, and why I am so happy as an individual that I get to do it.
It is exciting. It's very gratifying when we get into our I refer to as our zone of genius, and we're just flying, right? It's like being in the air, flying, because the things that you and I teach, LinkedIn, for example, me, a broader business development scope of services, these are things that are so permeated into my brain and into my DNA at this point that, my husband often has says, like, why were you talking about reputation building last night in your sleep? I heard, because because it's so, it's just, I talk about it, I've written about it, I've spoken about it for decades. It's just now part of me. And so, that's what, over time, and something that we hear is that, these are how habits are built, is those small steps every day that become the habits, 21 days to create a new habit. And so I want to jump into I'd like for you to give me the top, I'm going to say 5 super must-haves on a populated professional profile.
You must have a banner on the very top of your LinkedIn profile that gives the reader, the casual reader, the attention deficit reader, an immediate impression of what type of business or what type of person you are. Now, that could be as simple as a panorama of the city you work in or live in, or it could be something of you in motion, in action. And if you look at mine, you see I've created a mosaic of pictures of me in action. Or it could be something interesting, but anything but the boilerplate. Because the boilerplate says you don't do more than you absolutely had to, and no one hires anybody who's a slacker. Start there.
Okay.
Second one, you must have, and you already said it, you must have a professional headshot. Something in the past 2 or 3 years, I'd say, not somebody who took your picture at a Christmas party 12 years ago where you look like you were pretty zoned out. That's not good enough. You know why? Because people will look at your picture on LinkedIn when they phone call you, and you want them to see you in a pleasant, approachable manner. They will have a better phone conversation when you look approachable while they're talking to you on the phone. Third thing, must be a headline. That is the line and a half of narrative right underneath your name that does not say, I repeat that, does not say partner at XYZ law firm or CFO at ABC Corporation. That is not a headline. And what is a headline? A headline is something that makes you want to pick up and read more about this, in the case of a newspaper, in the case of a title of a book, in a case of your LinkedIn profile. Don't say what you are, say why you do what you do in your headline. And that's hard because you only get 140 characters. And if you're like me, you've got like 35 or more years of experience in multiple industries, you need to bubble up to the top all that experience. It has to be easy to read, understand, to make the person want to read down more and more. Then you get, are we at number 4 yet?
We're number 4. Mm-hmm.
Number 4 is going to be your intro section, where you speak about yourself and you enhance the 140 characters up above and begin to delve into your elevator pitch that tells why you do what you do in a more elaborate, more interesting way without giving away all the goodies. And then your 5th and everything else below that is going to reinforce all of what's above it. As they read down, they will see who you are and why you do what you do. As they read below your about section, they're going to see, where did you come from? What are you doing now? What did you learn there? What do you bring to the table today? You might even talk about where you went to school, publications you've had, your honors. And people say, no one cares about my honors. Well, if it was in this decade, in this century, you should talk about your honors. Anything that reinforces the things you say about yourself, the way other people reflect on you. Because it's not about you talking about you all the time. It's endorsements of skills, it's recommendations, it's honors, it's awards that people bestow upon you because you earned them. And no matter if you're a high school student or you're an 80-something-year-old person, you know what you need to be proud about and want to show as your accolades. So that's pretty
That's
much 5
awesome.
things. I can go 10 if you want. I can keep going.
Now I want to just interject what I think is one very, very important point. And that is the LinkedIn profile ultimately is not about the person with the LinkedIn profile. The LinkedIn profile, in my view, is the calling card, the digital business card for entree into online relationship building. So
If I follow you everywhere you go. If somebody mentions your name, this is how I met you.
yep.
It's a perfect example. Somebody said, you need to contact Kimberly. So before I contacted Kimberly, I read her profile. So I knew enough about her to have a great conversation with you, to know that the person who referred the two of us together was on target about the things we could talk about. Look, who knew it was going to end up being this, which is great because we took it from there to make it happen. So it's electrons all arranged in a nice little way that help us be a little bit more accessible as blood and guts humans. And we need to have more telephone and honest conversation and less electronic conversation. I understand the need. The electronics is the stimulus for the honest personal conversation, but nothing beats the old way of speaking to get business connections.
Well, I would add to that something that I'm reminded of often, because not only am I a teacher and a trainer like you, but I'm also a student. I'm a lifelong student, and in the part of the schools that I go to, we talk about IRL, in real life. So LinkedIn and all the other social media platforms and channels are a conduit. It is another option in our toolkit, another tool in our toolkit to be a beginning place of connection, of learning, of referring, of helping, of inspiring, all these action words.
Right.
Yes, and to do business, because you and I will refer business back and forth to one another. But if I'm ever up in Connecticut, I'm going to see if I can swing through and see Marc Halpert.
Well, good. Right? I hope so. And you know what? It goes so much further beyond this state or the next state or the next country or an ocean. I've put out articles, and I had an article that I absolutely loved because I felt so good writing it. It was about gesturing and how just liking other people's material is just not a way of giving back and being appreciative. It's the comments, it's the pat on the back, it's the thank you, it's the, well, I saw you said that, and have you ever thought about this? It's this conversation that you create electronically. But at the end of the day, you don't know who's reading you. And in one of these articles, a guy in Iran wrote back to me in Farsi, and I took it to my friend who I knew spoke Farsi, and he said to me, you really have quite a nice compliment and a fan in Iran. He wrote back to thank you because he can't read material like this in his country. So you don't know where your voice ends on LinkedIn, which is why you have to be careful about what you say and never be politically or in any other way and have innuendo. But you can be fun, you can be entertaining, you can be honest, you can be decent, you can be real. Absolutely. And it goes on and on. I have so many stories. You have so many stories. Industries I never thought existed that I was working in. People I never thought I'd ever meet that I got to work with really deeply in my coaching sessions. That I get in their heads and we become fast friends, and it's just builds the world that I live in. And I love it. I mean, you can't hear. Can you hear it?
Got a little passion there, and I feel very similar. And my focus is, in addition to just enhancing and enriching our lives. Period. As I know you do, I've always leveraged LinkedIn and helped my clients leverage LinkedIn to grow their businesses. And we all need as many toolkits in our tools as we can in our toolkits. And to have a tool like LinkedIn that's accessible on any device, that we can literally, and this is what I do. After dinner, I usually bring my laptop down to our den, and I'll hop on LinkedIn and I will look and very, very targeted in connecting with others. I have very specific sequence messaging language that I use to invite people to my network, to my businesses, obviously networked, my change makers business, my KLA marketing business, for various reasons that they've so impressed me that I would love to invite them to be a guest on our podcast like you are today. And I have a podcast, Secret Sauce Marketing Tastings for KLA Marketing, or looking up the ladder, people who are doing the things that I am doing or want to do better, and learning so I can be the student and I can share all this. I mean, it ultimately comes of sharing, but I want to dive back into some of the very granular techniques and tips for a novice LinkedIn user. So we've got the 5 top tips of populating a professional profile. So where should people start? Where should professional services or other users start to begin building their LinkedIn network?
Oh, this is such a good question. I'm so glad you asked that. This is like writing a novel. You cannot get to chapter 23 unless you've really written chapters 1 through 22 really, really well, which means you don't know what's going to happen on your LinkedIn profile unless you plan it. So you need to sketch out section by section the themes and the facets of your capabilities that you want to hit on in different languages, in different ways, in different methods, to show the full gamut, the full array of who you are. So I like to compare it to like a cut stone. A cut stone is ugly until you start cutting it and bringing out the light in it. And every cut, every facet on that stone makes it more valuable. So if you have a skill in LinkedIn training, you need to talk about LinkedIn training as one of your skills, one of your traits, and talk about it throughout your LinkedIn profile and plan it. So you're not super top heavy in LinkedIn training at the expense of LinkedIn group training or LinkedIn individual coaching. So you are basically creating the brand around the ingredients of the brand in the proportion that you want to display. And you can talk about yourself, and you can talk about examples of skills that you've had or that you've demonstrated, but you have to say it in a pre-planned and intelligent way, because the reader comes to you, like I said before, attention deficit and casually, until you pull that reader in. This is chapter 1. If you like chapter 1, come with me to chapter 2, and then go all the way down as far as you can get them to go until they complete the entire profile. And it has to be engaging. It has to be concise. It has to be pre-thought out carefully. And the best way to write each section, and I tell this to my clients all the time, these are the mechanics of how to do anything in a project format. It's how I've done my books. It's how I do my online courses. You write it on Word, and each chapter or each section on LinkedIn is its own page, and you rewrite the entire section multiple times from a fresh perspective. And when you have finished 5 or 6 fresh perspectives on completely blank screens, you print them out, and you take a old-fashioned yellow highlighter and you highlight the best of each attempt, and you pull them all together. And I guarantee you, for things like the headline, which is the hardest thing on LinkedIn to write, this will help you write an amazing headline. And I've had people who called me squealing with delight saying, I was so stuck, I couldn't write my headline, and then I did this 5 different blank screens thing you told me to do. Oh my God, it made all the difference in the world. So there's all these tricks. No one sits down and writes A Tale of Two Cities in one sitting. Don't expect it to happen in an afternoon. So many people say, I don't have time to write my profile. Well, I'm sorry, then you must not have time to invest in yourself. And if you won't invest in yourself, like I said before, no one else will, or if they do, it's not going to be what you want. So spend the time, give yourself the lateral leeway to make mistakes, to rewrite them, to make them better. And my profile is now 12, 13 years old. I still change it all the time because I'm still changing. and I'm always in beta. And since I'm always in beta, if you want to learn about always in beta, get the book, The Startup of You, Y-O-U, by Reid Hoffman, and read about what it's like to never be a finished product. And that will validate the angst that so many clients of mine have. It's fine not to be a finished product. So your profile shows you as a developing brand and how you're never going to be an old brand. You're going to be a relevant brand. That's the idea.
Well, that's a excellent point. So many of our professional services clients in their formal education had it drilled into them that unlike what I work on, done is better than perfect. It must be perfect and done. And so they get so incredibly log jammed and paralyzed in what to actually write and include in the profile, because they, and most professional services folks are very conscientious and they don't want to run afoul of their ethics. But that to me is no excuse to do nothing, because the ethic guidelines are very easily accessible from the state reporting agencies, whether it's financial services, legal, what have you, accounting, what have you. So, you know, it really comes down to motivation and self-direction, because, you know,
And it comes down, it comes down to repelling what Seth Godin calls that lizard brain, that thing in the back of your head that says, I can't, I won't, I'll never be able to. It allows you, and also the way we were all trained as kids, don't talk about yourself, don't be stuck up, don't be self-righteous, don't be this, don't be that, from teachers, clergy, parents. Now in this age we're in right now, you got to be talking about yourself, and you got to, because your competitors that are half your age are talking about themselves. And if you're not talking about yourself, and I've said this before today, you are missing the opportunity to have the record show why you do what you do, the way you want to be known. Right. It's so important.
So what I absolutely agree. I couldn't feel stronger. I feel as strongly as you do about this. I really feel strongly that, you know, with all the tragedy comes innovation. And when our anti-friend, the CV era, passes on through, that we all are going to be changed. And I think if we have learned nothing else, that we are now in the midst of learning how we can innovate on the fly with tools and technologies that have been available for way long time. I think LinkedIn came in around 2006. And with people being sheltering in place, that there's got to be some creativity used to how are we going to attract clients and how are we going to maintain the clients that we have. I absolutely am shocked out of my eyeballs when I hear our clients are not linked in with their clients, which is tremendous lost opportunities. And so, you know, these are, if our listeners get nothing out of our conversation today, I hope and pray that they hear loudly from two experts who have been in the field teaching, learning, and evangelizing the imperative for LinkedIn. That is a starting point for us all today. And certainly, Marc, I want to give you an opportunity to provide a resource to our listeners, because while I teach on it, I've trained on it, I've written some on it, Mr. Marc Halpert has literally wrote the book on LinkedIn for professional services. So please give us a little bit more information.
Glad to. Well, the American Bar Association asked me to write this book, and I was really flattered, and I'm not an attorney, so that was even more flattering. The book is called LinkedIn Marketing Techniques for Law and Professional Practices. It's available on Amazon, on barnesandnoble.com, and on the ABA website. The book is designed and ordered in the order in which you read LinkedIn, from the top to the bottom. It has a chapter in there written by a colleague of mine about legal ethics, because it was for the ABA. Nonetheless, the book is designed to be a field guide, a field reference guide. So when you need something, it has a really good index, you can look it up. Now, like all things LinkedIn, LinkedIn changes all the time. The book is still pretty, like 90% accurate in terms of the changes to LinkedIn. Anything beyond that, you can find it. You'll figure it out what you need to do just by researching it. So the book is my way of making it easier for people who are book learners to use LinkedIn. The book is also available in audiobook, also in the same places I told you about. And it's, I'm sorry, not audiobook, excuse me. It's on electronic book, ebook version.
Kindle, like a Kindle?
Yeah, like Kindle. I'm sorry, I totally misspoke there. On Kindle. A lot of people, I've seen people reading my book on the train into New York City. It's just a huge compliment. It's this great feeling. I said, I wrote that book. See that? I wrote that. So, you just don't know who needs it, and you're really not talking about a very long book. It's like 162 pages long. Wow. One guy from New Jersey called me and he said, I just bought your book. I loved it. Now I want to work with you. Having read your book, would you please be my LinkedIn coach? So he took the tenets and what I did, and I totally tied it into what he was all about. So, you just don't know. So the book is a calling card. It's like my biggest business card. My LinkedIn profile is my website. It's a micro website for the work I do, and I constantly nurture my website. I have a blog. You can read my blog. You can subscribe to my blog for free at collaborate.com, connect2collaborate.com. Comes to you every weekday morning at 8 a.m. And my LinkedIn URL is linkedin.com/in/Marc Halpert, MarcHalpert. You can call me, you can text me, you can do I do all methods of communication. And it's all on my contact page on LinkedIn, but primarily I just love talking about it. So you got to sit back if you're going to call me or talk to me. It's going to come at you a lot deeper and heavier than you really expect.
Well, this is phenomenal, Marc. And for our listeners, I want to share that this is LinkedIn, the why of LinkedIn, the how of LinkedIn, the ongoing nurturing and feeding and caring for LinkedIn, your profile, your activities, your participation, your thought leadership. All those things are certainly more than we can cover in one podcast, because no one's going to listen for hours and hours. And so I've invited Marc to join us again to address some of the next issues that we all have, each of us have seen in developing a robust online presence via the LinkedIn social media tool. So for today, I'm going to stop it right there and can't thank Marc enough for joining me today. And then we're going to reconvene and maybe shortly and come back to our listeners with the next, the what or the how of LinkedIn and offer some best practices of how people, professional services providers and beyond, can not only, now we're starting with the fact that you have the best possible profile that you can manage that correctly, concisely, succinctly represents who you are as a professional, and you've added in some human elements because that's what people want to see, and those are what are rallying cries that you're not a robot, you're a living, breathing human being. And then we're going to take it to the next step. And so until next time, thank you everyone for joining us for a very invigorating, energetic conversation about the imperative to jump on LinkedIn, not only for high school students, but for 80 generation business folks and professional services providers. And until next time, stay bold.